All right, we should be live. We're back for Sundered Ages Talks 8, almost up to 10, almost to double digits. This is part 2, our Friday episode on February 2nd, and we are talking about Feats, but rather than the sort of critical look that we took at Feats on Tuesday in traditional D20 systems today, is how do Feats work in a classless system, specifically in Sundered Ages. But obviously some of the ideas here are not brand new. They've just been put together in a new way for our system.
I wanted to just quickly say I'm glad you got my memo that we're both wearing the blue shirt today. Mine's actually a sweater, but I think it's teamwork, right?
Yeah, it's like Target tees and showing up with the same color to the party.
That happened with so many people in our group of friends, yeah. So I think where we left off last time, I think was people could understand that we didn't get rid of Feats. We kept them. They were inherently a good idea. They just Wizards did it wrong, right? Or they didn't follow through with what was a great idea. You know, if they had expanded on what Pathfinder had, it could have been better, but they didn't. They just got rid of it, and we both thought that whatever next edition it may be, 6th, whatever, they probably won't do it. But we kept it. You kept it.
We sure did.
And you refined it quite a bit. So I'd say, the first question being, what role do Feats play in Sundered Ages? So are they... Can they be seen? Could they be seen exactly how people saw them in Pathfinder? Obviously, they're not going to be how they are in 5th because we shit on it so much. But is it a lot of traditional stuff with a little addition to it, or is it completely new?
Okay. Well, first I'll say it has been refined, but it's also been greatly expanded on. I forgot what your first question was there. You said, what's the role for them?
Yeah, what's the role that the Feats serve if it's not exactly the same?
Okay.
They did.
The role the Feats serve, because we're in a classless system, because you're not playing the game as a fighter, a barbarian, a wizard, what have you, as a Kenshi swordmaster. Because of that, your character is based on skills, your character is based on the race that you picked, your character is based on how you want to play. There's no archetypal thing that says you have to do this. And so Feats are feeding into that same system. They serve much the same purpose as what I think Feats were intended to serve in older editions, which was, hey, you're leveling up, you've got Fighter A and Fighter B, and they should have, rather than just picking with their 2 skill points, assuming they had no intelligence malice, their 2 skill points every level that they get to put into probably like riding and climbing, or of like the 4 choices that they could pick. That might not be very different. All fighters might go, I might get a horse sometime, I'm going to put in riding, and then pick 1 skill. A feat was to differentiate themselves from other fighters, from other people that did in any way the same job that they did. And I think that's part of the reason why fighters specifically got so many feats. Because if you're a wizard or a cleric, you've got all these spells. If you're even a ranger or a rogue or something, yeah, you're doing a lot of combat, but the way that you go about combat is going to be different than a lot of other classes. A fighter, there was nothing specific about the fighter. Like, they fight, they might do it with a bow, they might do it with a bola, right? But they didn't have class abilities to make it cool or feel custom, and so you had to give fighters extra feats to help them, tweak their character here and there. So I took that idea, and because there are no classes at all, if you take 2-handed weapons as a skill, and someone else takes 2-handed weapons, I don't want your characters to feel the same way, unless you're trying to. Maybe you're playing a game where you and another player are brothers, and you grew up and your dad taught you how to fight, and so you both use 2-handed weapons, and you both took the same feats for that, and then you're going to differentiate yourself elsewhere. Whatever. You could still do that. But because there are no class abilities because there's no classes, and the skills do come with some abilities. Instead, feats is one of those areas where you are going to drastically decide what your character is good at, what they're better at than other people, and how they're defined. And so the game is designed as far as levels to be the same sort of experience as a standard D&D type system. So, you're seeing anywhere roughly between 15 to 20 being like the max cap before what you would consider to be epic levels. And you get a feat every level. So to go back to that first point, what's the role of them? The role of them is to help you define your character and what they're good at and how they're different from other people. And so we want to help you do that as thoroughly as possible. And so you're going to be taking a feat every single level to do that. And if you're a human at level 1, you're going to take 2 feats because humans can't fly and they don't have special vision.
Yeah.
Same as always.
Yeah. So many could argue a feat at every level. I think originally part of it was because if they gave feats at every level, then people would be bananas strong. Are they toned down, or how do you accustom feats that if you get them every level, how are we just not getting crazy strong between level 1 and level 2 and level 2 and level 3, and everybody's scaling appropriately? How do you kind of work with that?
Okay. Well, feats, they are strong. I would say they're probably about as good. If they're probably about as good as feats were if you're familiar with 3X or with Pathfinder. But you're getting more of them. So like you said, they have to... how does that balance? It balances in the fact that your character... Because we don't have to worry about balancing, like, oh, you're going to take this feat, it's going to add slightly more damage. Oh, you're going to take this feat, it's going to add slightly more skill bonus. And think every single time a new feat is added, oh man, but what if class X or class Y takes this feat? Oh man, what if class X takes these 3 feats, and together now they've got this huge bonus because of the class ability that they already have. That's not a thing. So right off the bat, we don't have to worry about the rogue having a bajillion skill points and then taking feats, and then just being like somehow gaming the system, which gaming the system is still a thing in 5th edition. You can read through on the subreddit at any hour of the day about what the new builds are, the various like paladin cross-class builds where it's like, I do 139 damage in 1 round. So no, they have to feel powerful enough that you should know what each of those feats does. At no point should you be like, oh, I'm taking this feat this level. It adds a +2 to a skill thing. I don't remember. It's not really important, right? Like I took it as a prerequisite, and whatever. It's just the number on the page. Every feat's going to do something for you, and more than that, like I said, as far as too powerful, if you're level 15 or 20, where you'd expect to end up at the end of like a long game or a long campaign, you're going to have 15 to 20 feats. Well, each skill by itself, whether that's alchemy or light armor, two-handed weapons, wanderer, whatever it is, each one of those has 10 to 12 feats by itself. You are always... I counted it for the first time ever right before we started. At the moment, there's 273 feats on the list. That's 10 to 12 per skill, and then 39 floating feats that are not directly tied to a specific skill. And so for every feat you're taking, you're choosing a bunch of other feats that you're not going to take. And rather than... so you could choose, if you're two-handed, to take these feats in two-handed or whatnot, but every one of those feats you're taking, if your campaign ends level 15, which, let's be real, most people, they never, they don't get a D&D character to level 12 or 15, right? You start a campaign at level 1, and maybe that campaign is, if it's a module, gets you to level 5. If you keep that character at all, you take that character from 5 to like 8 or 9 with the next module. People still, post on forums and whatnot, like, I've never gotten past like level 12 with a character because the campaign always starts over. The DM gets tired of it, or the players get tired of it. Yeah. So even at level 12, if you spent every feat that you got on two-handed, you would just barely have finished every feat on there. And so, like, you've given up so many other opportunities in the process. That being said, there are feats that work well together. There are feats, they all have requirements on them. You can't take a feat for a skill unless you have some investment in the skill. And some feats within a skill work like a tree. They in the way that you would take like weapon focus as a prerequisite for weapon specialization, as a prerequisite for greater weapon focus. You have to take some of these things first. That's seen, I think, best in some of the lines, like if you have the sneak skill, you have feats where, okay, here's one that adds to your sneak, here's a bonus, but it also allows you, instead of moving at, 1/4 speed while sneaking, you now move at half speed. So, like I said, a feat should never just do one thing that you're going to forget about. You're like, oh, okay,
right.
I need to write down this note. Everyone else is going to only move at 5 or 10 feet if they sneak. I'm going to move this fast. The follow-up feat for that adds another 2 or 3 to the skill, but it also gets you up to moving at like 3/4 speed. So even the ones that just tweak your skills here or there a little bit are also doing some secondary effect, so that there's a reason why you would want to take them over something else that adds a plus to hit or to damage or allows you to craft something, right? Each one of these should be worth taking. And I haven't yet, and I know because I constantly ask you and the other people that play in the game, when you're leveling up, and I'm like, so what feat are you taking? Almost never, unless you guys have been sitting right at like that level up for a while, people don't know what they want to take, and they'll say like, there's like 3 that I'm looking at. Because they're all worth taking. I haven't had people come back and say, I'm doing speaking, and none of these feats are worth taking.
Yeah, it definitely has always been. I've always felt like I was missing out on one thing in a good way, because I was like, I so badly want this one, but it's like I want that one too, and it's like, okay, I have to choose this one. I'll get that one next level. But I have something to look forward to.
You should, unlike walking into a grocery store, right, and getting to depressingly choose between a bunch of shitty cereals that are all the same thing. They have different pictures on them, where the choice doesn't really make a difference. When you take a feat, it really should be a choice between things that are going to benefit you in different ways. And you say like, okay, I'm going to take this one here at level 5. I really want these other 2 feats, so when I get level 6, I'm taking one of these as well, and then I'll circle back around at a later level to grab the third one, because by the time I hit, level 7, I'm going to reach the new skill tier to take that feat that I wanted in ranged, and that has to be the priority at that level for me based on the character I'm making. So you can plan ahead, and it's been made as straightforward as possible, and easy to see, like understand in the book and whatnot, that these feats require this tier in the skill. Here's what they do. Just again, the same thing with the spells that we had originally in the skill descriptions. A person that's never played D&D should be able to look at that list and see exactly what they do and what the requirement is, so that they could plan ahead if they want to.
Oh, and that's a good thing to bring up. So, one of the big things about the 2 newest editions, 4th and 5th, for Wizards was making the game really open to having new players. That was kind of the thing with 4th edition, especially, was it was supposed to be able to just be anybody could pick it up, know exactly how to play.
Yeah, because anyone can play World of Warcraft.
Yes, but of course they went a little too far in one direction. So do you think, you just said that they should be able to do that, but let's say I'm starting. I'm going to be the DM for a new Sundered Ages campaign. and my character or my players don't know exactly. We're going to meet over coffee. Everybody's going to figure out what they want to play, because that's a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
Everybody meets up.
Like a session 0 setup. Yeah.
Yeah, so everybody's going to figure out what they want to play for I give them the storyline and everything like that. And then could they, in theory, just look at a feat list and say, all right, here's the feats for all the different skills. I know I really want to do this one. This looks cool. And then they can sort of work their way backwards if they know maybe that they're going to be able to, the campaign, I could tell them the campaign's probably going to end around 12 because that's what I average. Do you think it would be easy enough that people could do that and sort of pick like, oh, if I do this and this and this, I'm going to feel a lot like a ranger. I'm going to feel a lot like a barbarian without the obvious traditional restrictions that come with it? Or do you think it'd be better for them to look at the skills? How do you think feats work into that as far as accepting new players and making builds like that?
Oh, they absolutely could. There are some things that are just part of playing in a D20 system that things like, okay, so if you're going to play a cleric type, and so you're like, okay, I'm going to take anima, which is positive and negative energy. When you look at the feat list, just like if you were looking at the skill itself, it tells you it's a primary skill, it's based on wisdom. That's right up front. And then you see there's 5 feats that you could take as soon as you're in the first year of that skill. The first one is the movement feat, which for spell skills, all of them have a movement feat that you can use giving up your move action. Yep. What it does, then a bunch of buff ones that, okay, overcharging your spells makes them a little stronger, improving them makes them cost a little bit less, outreach, adding range to anima spells that are otherwise touch, and staggered energy, healing over time. Like, without getting into any of the actual finery of the feats and like the full feat descriptions in the part of the book that those are in, which each have like a paragraph or more of text to describe mechanically, here's the way that the feat works, here's the requirement, here's even flavor text, because I love writing like witty names. So some of them have to be changed before we launch because they're not appropriate for a mass audience, and some of them are just memes at the moment. Yeah. But no, without even looking at the full description for these, they could look and go, okay, what I want to do is be like a vampire hunter. Like, that's the character I want to make. You tell your people, we're going to play like a Van Helsing game. That's the idea. And then you point them, you say, hey, stuff, if you want to be like a priest type character or a paladin, you're going to want to look at anima. If you want to be like the tracker for the group, you're going to want to look at holism. If you want to be the person that is sneaking around or breaking into places, like all the things that you think that they might need for the campaign, you say, yeah, you're going to look at anima, you're going to want to look at sneaking, thieving, whatever the case may be. They can just pull up the list and go, oh, okay, anima, I don't really know what that is. My DM told me that I should look into this. And then you see the list of things and you're like, oh, exorcist, like I know, I've seen the movie, or I'm familiar with it as like a cultural icon. I know that's a thing against like spirits or undead. Hit and damage bonus against all evil outsiders and undead with anima spell. Okay, wow. Okay, so, and it's related to an earlier feat, Deathstalker. Hit and okay, let me go look up the actual definitions for those things that are just a couple pages later, and you read it and you go, that sounds exactly like the kind of character I want to play. You've already been shown, here's the skill, here's what the feat does, here's the requirement as far as like what tier of anima you'd have to be at, if there are any requirements as far as earlier feats, and then now that you're actually looking at the feat definition, you get the full form. Here's 2 paragraphs of text describing Deathstalker does this, Exorcist does this, and by the time that you're reading those, you're seeing all the other feats in anima to decide, okay, wow, maybe I want to make anima the primary skill that I'm focusing my character around. Here's all the other things I can do with it now that I've decided I want to branch into this, at least in some way, right? And the same thing could be done for the person that's looking into sneaking, or the person that's looking into thieving, or the guy that is going to carry around like the vampire slang like crossbow, looking into ranged. Like, a lot of these feats, wow, these have cool names. Threading the needle, on their own, puncture wound, spitfire. Like, you're just looking through it and you're like, I want an extra attack. Who wouldn't? I want to be able to shoot and move. I want armor penetration. Well, let me go check what that is. People that are brand new will see the short definitions, see the basic requirements as they stand. And yeah, 5 minutes, they could understand what those feats are. You tell them, we're only going to get to level 10, and here's the highest that your skill could be. And they go, okay, so I don't even have to look at stuff that's in tier 3 or 4. We're only going to get to tier 1 and 2. Okay, those are the feats. All right, cool. I definitely want to do those things, and then fill out the rest of the character around that.
Yeah.
And that's it's been made as easy as possible, just like the rest of the character creation process has.
So it sounds like there's a lot of feats, which is great. But there's undoubtedly people can't do not every single thing that goes across someone's mind is going to be a feat or an ability. You couldn't possibly cover every single section of every single rock. Would there be future additions or added content for the equivalent of maybe like prestige classing? And this might be more on a good day to talk about skills, because we haven't spoken about that, but obviously feats are tied in with the skills. But do you think you'd ever add more feats? Or even add more skills and things like that? And how would that work?
Yeah, one, absolutely. And two, I continued to do that until the people that are helping me get the book out and get the system squared off for release at the end of the year, said, you have to stop doing this. Because I just kept like, I've been DMing since I was 12 or 13 on and off, and I'm 31. Like, you get all these cool ideas and you write it down, and since it's my system, I could integrate any of them. And I finally, the way that it's capped off right now, when the game releases, I gotta keep feats under 300. Like, we're already at 273. I'm capping myself off at 300. That gives me 27 more good ideas, and then that'll be it if I get that high before we ship the book as it is, or the PDF. But as far as like prestige classes or adding feats, absolutely. Like, if someone looks at this book and they're the DM, or even if they're a player, and they see all the feats as they exist, they're going to know roughly, how strong a feat should be based on the requirement they want to set it up on, and it'd be easy to add something new. And you know what? Like, the whole point is that this system is less like Windows and more like a Linux edition for a tabletop game. It's more opened up. There's less things that are concrete about it as far as choices that have been made for you, right? It's being set up to be as easy to understand as possible. You don't have to learn how to type out your own command structure to run programs like in Linux. But all the options are there to get as crazy as you want with it. Prestige classes is a thing that will be done and also not. There will never be any classes.
Right.
The compromise that I've made is, one, the book already has archetypes listed for all the base classes that you'd see in a normal D&D game, and a couple prestige classes that don't strictly fall under those. And what the archetype is just a basic rundown where I thought of, here's a good summary of what a fighter is, and then here are the feats, or here are the skills, primary and secondary, that you would take to make like a traditional fighter. If you're, again, for someone that was brand new, they said, I want to make Conan. They look at Barbarian, and they go, okay, here are the skills that I should go look up first. But it's not a hard-coded part of the game. It's a suggestion area. The other side of that, and the place that I'll probably stop myself at as far as the feats go, is combined feats. So feats, I told you there's 273 right now. The majority of them, almost 250, are linked directly to one skill. But combination feats are not. Combination feats, exactly what the name says, are linked to 2 skills, and they're linked to skills that use the same stat. So, like, strength at the moment is two-handed, pugilism, and athletics. And so, at the places where those skills have crossed over with primary and secondary, athletics is secondary, the other 2 are primary, there's a combination feat. So, there's no prestige classes, but a prestige class already was a special way that sort of 2 ideas or more have come together. So a combination feat is that same thing. So, for example, the combination feat for strength, for athletics and two-handed, is called Bounding Charge. You have to be on tier 2 of both of those skills. So it is still set in the same way that some of the feats were in earlier editions, where like you must be this level. Like Improved Critical, I think was like level 8 in 3rd edition. Just to show this isn't something that anyone can do, right? This is something that takes training. You have to have committed to these 2 skills. You can now make a leap as part of your charge attack. So you'd make an athletics check. Except you don't suffer attacks of opportunity for any of the squares you move through while jumping. If you've played a lot of D&D, you probably know avoiding attacks of opportunity is great. You don't ever want to be hit, unless you're playing some sort of weird like damage shield meta, right? Whatever the case may be. But so that reflects both of those, whereas the other one, pugilism and athletics, is called intimidating physique. Pugilism being like unarmed, think of a monk, is someone that has become so physically intimidating that they get an armor bonus from wearing no armor. Like they've developed their body, they've gone full like Bruce Lee martial art, like physical perfection. And so their body has hardened in response to that. And there's no class in the game that gets that benefit because there's no class. So the only way that you as a player could get that outside of items or a spell is someone that goes that route. So that if you go that route, you can feel your character is special because, some people might take athletics, some people might take pugilism. A much smaller combination of those 2 overlapping circles is going to take both and get it up to the tier required for the combination feat. So there's things like that for all of them. There's a bunch for ranged that involve doing cool stuff with ranged weapons, using special types of ammunition. For the various casting ones, with Druid. Druid and Alchemy come together to give your poisons and whatnot extra bite, where you can infuse them with druidic energies. Just a lot of cool stuff. And like I said, anywhere where 2 skills that use the same primary stat, which is Strength, Dex, Con, Intelligence, Wisdom, Charisma, there's a combination feat for those 2 things. And so most people are not going to be in a situation where they have more than 2 of those skills at that level at the same time, until they're somewhere around level 15, where they've said, I've gone far enough in one skill, I'm going to start investing in this other one. And so it, like I said, it really will add that sense of, here's my character, I just leveled up, I'm level 8 or 9 or 10 or whatnot, taking this combination feat. This is on par with the sort of class abilities that you would look at for a prestige class and go like, if this were 3.5 or Pathfinder or something, Bounding Charge would be the primary skill or the primary class ability for some special Berserker class, right? It would, Boundless Charge or Boundless Berserker or something would just straight up be the name of the class. You get full attack bonus, you get an extra rage or 2 per day, and then you'd get this ability to make Bounding Charge attacks and not suffer penalties of attacks of opportunity. That's more or less what most 5-level prestige classes were. And so we've done our best to wrap that up into combination feats, of which there will be more as we tie multiple stats together, but at the moment, and probably at release, I'm going to do my very best to limit it to 300 feats.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds great. It sounds like, if I'm level 12 and I put half of my skill points into two-handed and my other half into whatever another thing is, athletics, because that's one of the ones you said. I'd get around an appropriate amount of feats to put in both, right? 6 in each. And that's, I think, like, let's say if I was a 12th level fighter, I would get, well, fighters got them every level, or every other level.
Fighters got them every other level and every third level. So you didn't get them, like, you got nothing at 5, you got nothing at 7, and nothing at 11. But other than that, by that time you'd basically have like 11 feats.
Yeah.
10 or 11.
So you're actually getting the same amount. And for those who aren't a fighter, you're getting a little bit more, but you get to separate them into another type of skill, which I think is interesting, because you said there's 10 to over a dozen on each skill, so you're getting about maybe half of them on each one. So that sounds awesome, and I can imagine how nobody is ever going to be the same for a while. I guess my only thing as we're sort of wrapping up here is, how do you feel about the feat system that you've created? Are there any things that you feel like you need to overcome going into a final release? Are there any problems that we took from the original feat system? Because obviously it was adopted and then reconstructed. Are there any things that you feel like you still need to overcome about that? Or do you think that, this system as is something that's pretty much going to be as good as it's going to get, and you're working most of your time now on other parts?
Well, honestly, just about every feat that's in here was written down as an initial idea and then re-scripted at least once, especially for the spell skills. As the numbers for our health and mana pools changed, as the plus to hit and dodge and all those things changed over the last 2 years or so, the feats have been re-scripted to constantly rebalance them and balance them against each other. I don't think there'll be a big change. The only thing I'm looking forward to is, I play test as many of these as I possibly can with the group. I run stuff by myself, which is how we originally started doing combat, like you and me just sitting in a room rolling dice at each other. One guy had a shield, one guy had a two-handed sword. Are these balanced? And I do that by myself just to see if I can get stuff done. When we get more people playing and play testing, which we'll be doing in a couple months, where we've got a group of 4 people that have never played before, play a one-off, maybe play a 4-campaign or a 4-session thing, just to get their feedback. I'm open to adaptation on this. I think it's great. It's really good. I think it's better than any of the 3rd edition, 4th edition, 5th, or Pathfinder than the way they did it. And I love Pathfinder. I think it's better, but I think it probably needs more attention from people that aren't looking at it from my direction. Just for, if it's 95% of the way there, that 5%, that the other 5% can't come from me. It has to come from feedback when someone, does get that one weird combination of feats that comes together, or someone goes, everybody in, 2 people in my group are playing this sort of character, and they both took this feat, and both of them have come to the opinion, and I, as the DM, have come to the opinion, it really isn't as good as the other feats they could have taken, and so, I let them get rid of it and pick another one. Would you take a second look at it? So I think there is going to be some modification there, but like I said, I think I'm 95% of the way there as is.
Excellent. I mean, I feel good about feats. I love feats.
Love feats. Need more.
Any closing comments? Maybe, do you know what we're going to talk about next week, or are we going to keep it a surprise again?
Closing comments? No. I mean, other than we love feats. I think that I think a lot of what I've done here is what the people that first came up with that notion of feats would have wanted to do if they didn't have to balance it around the way that classes existed in
Right.
second edition going forward.
Yeah.
If they'd had the ability, like they put as a variant in I think 3rd or 3.5, to make like basic rogue fighter wizard characters where everything else was up to you, and that had been the mainstay of D&D, that they probably could have made a lot of cool feats. They probably could have made the feats they had more exciting, and they could have given you more of them. But they did a really good job with what they had. I think we've done an even better job, and we have the opportunity to do more because we're not bounded by classes. As far as next week, the plan right now is to go up against crafting, and the fact that in most D&D systems, crafting is smithing, making magic items, and then every other thing in the world that players almost never invest any time in. And why all of them are important, and that they should be represented in one way or another for your characters in your campaign.
All right, we're going to see more people crafting.
More people crafting, yes, everyone.
Excellent. All right,
well, that's it. Thanks for tuning in, anybody that stopped in. Anyone that's watching it on YouTube later, I look forward to comments and eventual people play testing the game and getting back to me there. And we'll see you guys on Tuesday.
See you guys next week.